Okay, so for this video, we're going to be doing an introduction to Braille, but more specifically, we're going to be focusing on the Braille Slate and Stylus. But before we kind of move into the Slate and Stylus itself, we're going to start with why it's kind of important to have access to them. And to do so, we're going to start off with a Perkins Brailler. This is what would be traditionally used for producing Braille material. It's really handy. It's just like an old school typewriter. The hard part with a machine such as this is that it is very large and kind of unwieldy. When you're trying to be kind of mobile and on the go, you don't want to be carrying around something that weighs several pounds. It's pretty much a giant chunk of cast iron. The pro of something like this is we can go through and type. I'm just going to throw the first few letters of the alphabet out here just so we have a reference point to go back to later. Oops, sorry, I tried to invade your space too much. And we'll throw this off to the side because that was obviously very heavy. So, some kind of basic introductions here is when we have a Braille cell. A Braille cell, as you saw in there, has 6 keys and a space bar because a Braille cell consists.
Maybe we should have checked them.
Yep. Okay, let's try a different marker. Does this one work? That kind of works. So we have 6 dots make up a Braille cell. So we have dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I hope that this is kind of coming through on the camera. But so we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we have our column 1, column 2. So dots 1, 2, 3 are in column 1, and then dots 4, 5, 6 are in column 2. And then we have row 1 is dot 1, 4, row 2 is dots 2, 5, and row 3, that's going to be, but it's supposed to be R3, is dot 3, 6. Now, generally you don't have to worry about columns and rows as much when you're doing traditional Braille. You just need to know dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when we're introducing the Slate and Stylus, it's going to be important to remember our columns versus our rows. And that's because, as we can kind of see, and it's going to be hard to pick up, is we have our dots that we pushed through on the Brailler. They feel through on this side of the paper. But once we introduce our slates over here, and we have 3 different kinds that we're going to introduce. And this guy here. And I'm just going to kind of go over these quickly, and then we'll just set a couple off to the side. Is when we're using these, we're going to be pushing through. So in order to get the dots to come out the way we want them, you're not really supposed to say it backwards, but we're going to be essentially pushing through and typing them backwards. Primarily today we'll be using one of these 2. I just wanted to introduce this one as well. The nice thing with these 3 slates is they all serve kind of some different purposes. So this one's really nice if we want to load a piece of paper in this way and just do 4 lines at a time. This slate works really well if we want to do pages sideways, or there is special Braille paper that is just a more horizontal orientation that this works well for this. And then our full page slate obviously can do a full page. So I'm going to move these off to the side for a sec, and we're going to take a look at how these actually function. So we have a little tool that we call a stylus, which is what we use to poke through the holes in here to actually create the Braille dots. Now on the typewriter, it pushes up from the back, which lets you feel the dots A, which is your dot 1 in column 1, row 1, and then you have your other dots that go across going down. But in here we have to push through from the back. So if we want that same dot one and we want to load our paper, let's see if I can make sure which way to, there we go. Have this is, normally you'd think that you'd load a piece of paper like this, but we need to reorientate the paper so it actually be loaded this way, because then we're going to be going in from right to left. And a kind of trick that you can do if you're trying to get the paper loaded is if you actually stand your slate up, it lets the paper go down to the bottom, and then you put it in the center groove down here. And I'll spin around so you can see it over here. So the paper is now on the table. You slide into that middle groove, and oops, I didn't get it caught quite. There we go. So it's down all the way, and it closes. And you see there's a tab here and here. If you push, it does a nice click, which means that there's a little hole, and we can kind of look at it on this slate here. There's a little, I don't call it a needle, but a little poker that sticks out that goes into a hole. So you see there's a poker there, and the hole here, that these clamp onto the paper to hold it in place. This does the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and take this paper back out so we can keep it as our reference point. So I'll leave that here so we can see that. And then I'm going to give you a blank piece of paper and see if you can get that loaded.
What middle thing were you talking about?
Okay,
Just
so
the hinge?
Yep, so you have this middle hinge. So this is where if we stand it up vertically, you can get used to it over time where you can just kind of hold it with your finger, but if, at least for starting off, you hold it this way, and you get it into this center hinge, and we'll turn it so you can kind of see it. And then let it kind of lay flat on the table. And then when you close this, oops. So see, so it's sticking out really far, which means that it came out away. So no, so we want it all the way over. There you go. And then close her in. And then you can, yep, feel it snap just like that. So because we want our columns and rows to look like this, but we know that we're having to push through from the back side, means that our Braille cells, when we do them now, we'll go ahead and draw a new Braille cell over here. And again, I'm really hoping that this is coming through on the camera nicely. So now this becomes our column 1. This becomes column, let's see if I can do it 2 upside down. This is our row 1, row 2, row 3, and then so this is our dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Kind of makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the way that we can kind of figure out how to do these is, let's say we want to do a dot 1. We're not going to worry about the letters yet. We'll get into letters in a bit. So let's just say we want to do a dot 1. So that's the top right. So when we take our stylus, and there are multiple kinds of, or styli, I guess. This is kind of a more old school one. So it has a flat part on one and a round side, and it kind of curls over. Some people really like this one. I particularly do not like this one. I prefer, I don't know, I guess call it the wishbone one. I have another one that's in my bag right now that's just like this, but it's actually plastic, so it's a little bit bigger. It's like a 3D printed one. But next one of these, you can get it between your 2 fingers and then loop your pointer over. So now with the tip of your pointer on here, and this going up into the crook of your finger, you get a lot of sensation and feedback from the tip. So if we come down into the Braille cells on here, and we start in our your top right corner, we can feel around, and I'll let you feel in a sec. You can feel there's a little indentation where the 6 dots will be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you go ahead, and I'll let you take this one, and I'll take this one, even though I don't like it. So you can feel where these are. So if you take and just find where the top right, your column 1, row 1 will be, and then just push down. You just officially made your first Braille dot. So if we wanted to do a number dot 2 in the next one, we can go back. Oops, sorry. If you raise your hand for a sec, if we feel in the cell that we just brailled in, you can feel where you poked through the paper at. So you know, okay, I just went in this one, and you can then lightly go to the edge and then flip into the next cell and then go down and put a 2 in. Okay, and then go to the next one and do a 3, and then 4, 5, 6 going across. Okay, so let's see how you did. So we have our A, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nicely done. So those are kind of the basics on how to start brailing. If we wanted to do some basic kind of Braille letters, we'll just do the first probably 3 here. We'll go A, B, C. A is a dot 1, which is why it's nice and easy. B is a dot 1 and a dot 2 in the same cell. And then a C is a dot 1 and a dot 4 in the same cell.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to give that a shot.
Do you want me to go in the line in between us?
Yep, but no looking. Do it by feeling. So I said use the tip of the stylus to feel where we've been, and then you can figure out where the blink is.
I went through, but it didn't really make the pop sound.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll get kind of a tricky one that may not make it. There you go. That one sounded nice.
What was C?
A dot 1, 4.
Oh, I missed that B and C.
That happens. This is your first time ever doing Braille, so I'm not going to hold it against you.
I'm going to do A, C, and then B.
Okay. Okay. So we'll go ahead and check. So this one's open, so we'll go up here. Oh, here's an A. Here's that. And there is nothing in that one. So where is your...
You're not even in my line.
No. But see, this is a nice thing with the stylus, is that, not even be able to see, is I can go around and explore where we've been on the page. Okay, so this is where we did. Okay. So, where did you...
I was in the second line.
Oh, you went up one. Okay, one... Okay, so kind of a basic introduction to the Slate and Stylus. Like I said, this is the full page. Now, let's set this aside for a second and try to use the smaller, more portable one. And we'll get into a little bit more why these are also so important. So I'll set this guy aside. So one of the nice things with this one, especially with this stylus, is that this makes a really handy portable on-the-go pack. I believe you can buy these through American Printing House for the Blind. Is your slate slides in the back here, generally fairly nicely. There we go. That slides in, and your stylus slides in the front. So this is super portable compared to that giant brailer. This also has the ability to do a lot more forms of paper than the the brailer has the capability to do, because you can put posted cards, post notes, note cards. Thank you. Anything that'll kind of fit in here, you can close over and put Braille dots on it. Now, Braille paper and laminated paper will last longer than like a post-it note will, but it's still fun for students to be able to do little notes to their friends, or just leave little sticky notes for yourself for the reminder, to to be able to do on other stuff. So we're going to go ahead and let's use this piece of paper. And let's say we wanted to start kind of closer to the bottom just so we can kind of keep looking at the top. We'll do it the same way we did with the full page slate, is if you stand it up on its side. And then you stand up the paper.
All the way into the...
Yep. That one gives a lot nicer snap. So you can see that for the most part, you can lift up the paper and it'll bring the slate with you. It may wiggle a little bit, but you have a pretty good lock on there. So now, one thing we'll go over real quick is when we lift up, I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, we have, oh, we missed that one, but we have this one that poked through, and then this one here poked through, and this one here. So we're still kind of crooked when we actually got the paper in, even though we stood it up. So we'll go ahead and try it again real quick. We'll stand it up. And I think the tablecloth may be causing part of the challenge here. And then we can close that. And then, if we want to, so see I was a little bit flatter. Now when we want to move it, we can take and kind of keep track of these and just slide the paper. And then now it's on those holes, so it has a really nice place marker. So we can close that over and we're ready to go again. And then same thing, kind of if you want to keep working down a page. This is where this is a little bit harder on a full page, is you have to keep moving it versus the full page of cells is a little bit easier to work with. Now, right now, this is on there backwards because we'd want these over this way, but yeah, it's going to be off a bit now. Make sure. So I'm upside down and backwards trying to, there we go, get us back to the top of the page. Let's see if I can still feel. So we can feel there. So let's come down to right about there on the page. And then close that up. So now we have our rings over here, which gives us our margins. We have a little tab here. And same thing with the other one. We can go in this column 1, row 1, column 2, row 2, and then we can keep going down the line. And just for giggles, let's throw a full cell out there. So, do you have any questions about the Slate and Stylus?
Do they ever get confused with these holes, thinking it's part of those?
It can happen. And you saw when we were trying to kind of line it up, when it was standing up, it was getting caught in these holes. So yes, it can happen. Usually the nice thing is if you're starting at the top of the paper, is that the hole, if we can kind of see here, if there, it's nice and kind of lined up there. If we poke this through, there, so we have the holes, are hopefully far enough away from these so that they don't get caught in there, and then as it staggers down,
so it's almost like the other lines on a traditional piece of like notebook paper.
Yep. And so yeah, so that's why you should still keep your margins over here, and then you can go, you know, pretty much all the way across, and it keeps you in that same margin as though it was a printed sheet of paper. But yeah, this is about the only tool. I mean, nowadays there are electronic Braille typewriters that you can use, but those don't have the ability to print stuff off on the go usually. They do have a display on them so you can read it yourself. But if you're wanting to kind of pass a note off to someone or just have like a kind of a Rolodex of note cards or anything, it doesn't really do that for you. So this is, you know, in my opinion, a lot of people's opinion, the best way to do Braille on the go. They do make these in plastic as well. so you can get it through airport security because they don't like when you bring a big piece of metal through airport security. And they do make a full plastic stylus. I don't like the stylus, but once again, for airport security, you can get through with a plastic one. You can't get through with a needle.
So you use these with your students regularly?
I use them fairly frequently. Like I said, I use this one some. This longer one, we generally kind of use more for just playing, or it's actually kind of fun making pictures with these. Being able to kind of poke dots through and make tactile images. But we really use this full page one quite a bit, actually. The really nice thing, like I said, is the portability of the Slate and Stylus is great. Whenever I start a student off with Braille, the nice thing that this has is it has the holes over here on the side, and the little smaller Slate and Stylus has the holes here, is that you can put these into a 3-ring binder. And the Braille paper, that's why I have these out here, is it's the one that has the 3 holes in it. So I get a 3-ring binder and set it up and make a Braille on-the-go kit for my students, so that every one of them has the ability to do Braille whenever and wherever they want to. One of the big parts with teaching kids Braille, and I know some people out there have had mixed things on how early to start kids with the Slate and Stylus. I like to say start them off as early as they possibly can. And here's why. Even if they're just going through and just poking dots randomly, it doesn't matter really what they're doing. It's just getting that routine of poking dots in, so that you can start building up that muscle memory of how to poke dots through. And then as they start developing that skill, for one thing, it's building finger and wrist strength. And then as they get more developed, you start having them just do the repeated dot 1, dot 1, dot 1, dot 1, dot 2, dot 2, dot 2. And then gradually doing that. And then over time, they start developing the ability to do letter A, then letter B, then letter C. And I believe that by having to do it the inverted way with the Slate and Stylus helps them to better understand the fundamentals of Braille, because they're not only having to think about it just being column 1 dot 1, but now their column 1 dot row 1 is over here, so they're having to think about it both ways. And if you can remember it both ways, definitely means you can remember it the quote-unquote normal way easier.
So you think like just letting them poke dots is like a Braille version of scribbling?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to put it. Is that they can just go to town, and some of the little kids I've worked with will sit here all day, and we'll just have a whole lesson, and they'll just go to town, and then they just have a paper afterwards. And the fun thing is, if I just go stab a million holes in here, is that when we take it out, it's not going to say anything. But this is still great exploration for them to just feel around the page and just get used to feeling dots, which helps for that nerve sensory aspect of Braille. And when you're starting with the really young kids, it doesn't matter. You don't care if they can start off going, A, B, C, D. You just want them to go, oh, here's a dot, here's a dot, here's a dot. And then eventually, here's a row of dots. Here's a row of dots. Oh, here's a row of A's. Here's a row of B's. And it's just one of those kind of fundamental things. And as they develop their education, as they develop their literacy, they'll also be then developing their ability to write Braille and then read Braille kind of all together. And I kind of see it as one of those multifaceted approaches that by kind of going from all these different angles helps them to build rather than just trying to go just A all the time.
So do you work with OT specialists a lot on helping them learn like how to feel the dots enough without being too much?
Not a whole lot with this. With OTs generally, we're doing some other like hand-eye coordination routines with them. It really does depend on the student though, because it depends on if they're a fine motor for an OT to be working or what kind of their goals are. The hard part is that most OTs don't know Braille. And so, I can kind of give them this on the thing of like, oh, just have them poke a million random dots and then they can feel it. And they can kind of do that part. But then as we try and develop it into actually teaching them, row one, column one, the OTs don't care enough usually to understand that, that extent of it, as simple as that may seem. But they can definitely do the, let's just go play, poke everything. I did have one student who was really bored one day and actually went through and full celled. So the full cell is all dots 1 through 6, an entire sheet of Braille paper. And they were just like watching TV. They're watching an anime and just kind of sat there and just poke, and just went through and poked every hole out on the paper just because they thought it was fun.
Just like a fidget.
Just like a fidget. And you know what? It's an amazing fidget, and it's great, and it's productive. And I was so happy to hear that they were actually doing that, and I didn't care that they weren't doing, actual fundamental Braille. Just that they had a Slate and Stylus when we're going to town was awesome in itself. And then that helps, like I said, it builds the finger muscle, it builds the dexterity in the wrist. And, like I said, when we had the paper in here, when you have those dots underneath and you're going through, and then you start feeling when they're trying to fill in the whole page. Well, now if they're trying to check and see if they've actually filled every hole, now they're starting to feel, oh, is there a dot there? Is there a dot there? Is there a dot there? And they're incidentally learning how to do it. So yes, I strongly believe in the Slate and Stylus. I strongly believe that students from as early of an age as possible should be using these. I think that they are very underrated tools for students who use Braille. So, yeah.
So with younger ones, is there still some that are like maybe bigger than this for like the small hands to grip better? Like how they have like the chunky crayons and markers?
Yes, there are. There are probably 30 plus different types of stylus that you can get.
Or can they be custom fit for somebody who maybe has some hand issues and needs something really like molded to them?
I don't know about that. If you knew someone with a 3D printer, they could probably make a custom one. I haven't seen anyone actually doing custom ones, but they do have a wide variety of sizes of them that you can use. One that I've seen that a lot older people like is there's one that looks almost kind of like a golf ball on top, where it's just a bigger ball. So they can actually kind of like palm it, and then they rock their wrist in because they've lost that finger ability to just push down. So they kind of hold it. I'll use this one so it holds, and then they can. This is gonna bother me if I just push through like that. Then they can kind of like do a whole hand, and then they can use their palm to actually feel where the dots are in there. Like I said, this one's a little bit smaller for a round one. Still, they do make them bigger. The one that I have seen a lot of them use that actually has the big round head on it, actually has a cap that will actually screw over the needle end of it, so that when they're throwing it in their purse or their yarn bag or anything like that, they don't have to worry about just like a floating needle around in there, that it screws off this way, spins around, and then threads back in, so it's nice and flat, and you don't have to worry about breaking, you don't have to worry about stabbing through a purse, anything else like that. So yeah, they do have different sizes. I don't know on the actual custom fit side.
So with your students, what kind of age range does this really start becoming pretty applicable for like daily writing?
That is really more of a student by student scenario. And usually it kind of goes along with how quickly they're actually developing their Braille skills overall. I've had some that within the first 3 to 4 months of learning Braille have picked this up really well and have just started actually using it. Given a lot of times I'll actually give them homework to do with this because, once again, portability. It's hard for them to be trying to carry the big Brailler back and forth to home and school, and some of them don't have Braillers at home at this point, so I can send this home with them and have them Braille notes out to me, that then when they bring back, whether it's just a note to me or it's an assignment, they can bring it back to me the next day, and then I can go through and proofread it and then go, okay, yes, this is correct. This is how this is spelled. This is this word. Or I can, go, okay, like you did good, but, here's some improvements that can be made. So, yeah, I've had some that, right away picked this up and ran with it. I've had some that, years down the line, it just wasn't a fit. They had a hard time with that, inversion from column 1 and column 2, that change coming over to here. So it really is just kind of a student by student basis.
So with students who are just learning to read and write, visually they will often learn both at the same time, like writing a letter A and being able to recognize what a letter A looks like and the sounds it makes and such like that. Is it the same kind of process here, learning how to Braille them in a situation like this and also be able to read them by touch?
It definitely is. And so generally with really young students, we use something called a swing cell, which is just kind of like a giant, full cell like this, and you can kind of put pegs in it. Another thing you can do with them that's kind of a fun game is you can get the 6 like cupcake tins, and you can put golf balls on them to fill in where the dots are, and you just have a big tactile thing to use then. And it's just kind of starting to get them introduced to the basic kind of concept of what a cell is. And then as they're doing that, you have, sheets that may just have a row of dots across it that they can follow and just kind of get that practice of tracking back and forth. And then you can have them practicing on the Perkins, big Braille machine, just typing on there. They can do random stuff, all the kind of get used to just typing, and then they can go ahead and then be using this to practice their typing. Like I said, do their random all over the place, whatever they want to do, and then start having them practice actually feeling out how the cell is, and then start getting their dot 1 put in, their dot 2s, dot 3s, dot 4s, dot 5s, so on and so forth, and practice that. A lot of times once we actually do start trying to put it into practice, it will be, okay, give me a couple rows of A's. And then it's just A. Okay, now give me a B, 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 B. And, you just kind of start with those very basic things.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of times is I'll have a sheet done out already for them that they can kind of feel it. And then I'll have them, like I said, either type or do it by hand and then do it over here and kind of copy what's on the page that they just read. So they're kind of reading and writing all at the same time. And at the same time doing those kind of apple lessons that you do with like a kind of traditional student on when you're teaching them how to read, write, speak, is you're kind of getting that phonics built into the writing with them.
So does it make a poppet with all of these in it? A 6-celled poppet?
I don't know what a poppet is.
Well, you'll have to look that up. The little like reusable like bubble wrap almost stuff.
Oh,
where it could be like 6 and then you could like pop a combination in there to make a letter. And what's this?
Well, maybe we can design that. That'll be our next $1 million idea. I've never seen that, but I mean, it could be done. That could be something fun to play with.
Have you ever seen so far any students that can kind of do this, like doing this and reading ambidextrously?
Yes, and that's actually a big goal, and that's one of the reasons why I actually really like teaching this, because that's something that I can do, is that I can read one-handed over here while typing with the other hand over here if I'm trying to take notes, and I discovered that to be really helpful for myself, so that's something that I try and teach my students how to do. One of the hard parts with the big Brailler is trying to push down all 6 keys at once can be really hard one-handed because, you only have 5 fingers and 6 keys. Versus doing it this way, I'm going to turn it around, is that if I wanted to go through and say we're reading over here, now the fun thing is if you're doing this is you're actually then having to write the opposite direction that you're reading. Given you're not generally trying to copy word for word, but if you're actually doing a quote, you can do word for word going backwards. Or then if you're, just the students reading a textbook and going through and reading it, a lot of times generally for kind of tracking, you use two hands, and you start over here, and they read until they get to here. Then you slide this hand down to the next line. It's called a scissor method, because then you're going across, and then this one gets started, and then this slides over and catches up and then goes across. Or then they find something that they want to take a note on. Well, instead of having to lift both hands off and move over to a typewriter, they can keep one hand here and come over here and go page 17, blah, 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 and then they can write it out. And then if they're copying it word for word, they can keep going across and just read with their left hand. Or they can just keep it as a tracker point, so they don't have to refind where they were, write their note down, and then go back. The other thing that I really love this, I know, I harp on how much I love this thing, and I'm one of the only people that probably loves this thing as much as I do, is for doing math problems. A lot of math is back and forth, and with a Slate and Stylus, especially the full page one, doing math notes on here works really, really well, because you can go through and be doing a math problem and go, 1 plus 2, and then you put 1 plus 2, and then, so generally if you're doing a horizontal problem, you have, 1 plus 2, and then your dot 2, 5 going across extends one cell out. I know I'm not going to go too far into how Nemeth works, but you'd go, I actually kind of am. So you have 1 plus 2, so the plus sign goes 1 to the left, as you would have it all lined up, and your equal sign extends 1 out to the right and 1 out to the left past the widest part of your problem. So, we'll go 1 plus 2, and then let's say our equal sign would be equals, 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 equals. So you can do this really quickly with a Slate and Stylus. I mean, you saw I just zipped it out real quick like that, and then you put your answer underneath, goes right here with 3. If you're trying to do this with a Brailler, you have to then go, okay, I'm going to plan out, I have to, tab over, put a 1, go down the next line, come back over, put 2 plus, and then come back down over, equals, 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 and then come back down and put your answer, and it's kind of time consuming. If you get good with this, you saw in 2 seconds, I do the entire thing out. And then, with normal math, if we started adding, more numbers on here, bigger problems, you can keep everything lined up with a Slate and Stylus and just go down the rows, and it allows students to do math way quicker than they can with a huge Brailler. Yes, I know a lot of students these days are using calculators and have Siri and go, hey, just do this for me. But if they're having to do it by hand, a Slate and Stylus will beat a Brailler every day of the week. And for me as a TVI, it's also fun because if I'm making math worksheets for students, and I don't have access to an embosser and have a computer to do it for me, I can go through and make the worksheet out using a Slate and Stylus way faster than having to go through and do all the planning entailed in using the Perkins Brailler. The Braille is nice for typing long essays. Anything short of a long essay, I go to the Slate and Stylus.
Good to know.
So, I know that's way more information than anyone probably ever wants to know on this, or what you want to know, but that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Do you have any other questions, or are you just kind of afraid to ask at this point?
Nothing I could think of right now.
Okay. Well, you had some amazing questions, so I appreciate that so much. Helped to inspire me to, keep this going. Let's say if anyone else out there has any questions, feel free to ask. I will do my best to answer them. If it's a longer question, I'll go ahead and make a whole separate video on it. But yes, I definitely recommend the full page Slate and Stylus. And then I do recommend it's down here, the small portable one. I really like how sturdy this one is, but it is heavier. And I don't know. I have very kind of mixed feelings on this one, whether I prefer this or the plastic one. This one's nicer to use. The plastic one, like I said, gets through security better, and it is lighter and it is cheaper, so it's easier to replace if it gets lost or damaged. So this one doesn't get damaged. The other one can be replaced if it is. So you have to kind of weigh out which one you like better. The size factor of this thing is great either way. So I'm not dissing on that. It's just which one's better for an individual situation. And then this big one is fun, but this one I just don't find myself using all that often. This is just kind of more of a toy kind of thing. And then like I said, I use the full page one every day. Last 2 cents I'm going to put out there, because I forgot to mention this earlier when I kind of breezed past it, is doing pictures is really fun on here. Is you can go through, and if a student has some vision remaining, you can take a sheet of paper and, let's see if I can do it kind of quickly on here, draw a shape out. So I know that sounds brutal. So there, we have a very poorly drawn boat. And then when you flip this through, I can't, but some people can see where that line is through there. And then you can actually go through and punch out where the line is. So then there's a tactile boat on the other side that the kid can then read.
Like a reverse dot to dot.
Exactly. If I use this, if I have a direct lighting source and I have it in black instead of red, I can see some of those. So I've been able to go through and do that. There's a little bit of a harder one to actually get down that. But for like TVIs or paras or teachers who working with students who have limited vision, for you example, you can see perfectly well. You could go through and see, oh, here's the boat outline, and puncture this out, and then the student has a tactile picture that they can then play with. So just another wonderful thing of the Slate that I know I keep rambling about how amazing these things are, but like I said, I absolutely love this thing. So and then the kids can have fun just doodling their own pictures as well and illustrating their own little drawings or their own narratives or whatever. But we'll go ahead. We'll cut there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to my lovely wife for tolerating this and having her wonderful participating questions. And once again, if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.